Have you ever wondered what it feels like to learn the truth about the person you are about to marry, not years later, but hours before you stand at the altar? Monique Johnson was 29, 7 months pregnant, and sure, her life was finally steady. The evening before her wedding, the house hummed with relatives and gospel on a speaker. Aunties debated napkins. Monique traced circles over the rise of her belly and told herself to breathe. Her childhood bedroom felt smaller than she remembered. The veil hung from a closet knob. The cream gown lay across the foot of the bed. She sat and listened to the friendly chaos of people who loved her. It should have made her laugh. Instead, a thin ribbon of worry tugged at her chest. The door opened without a knock. Tasha Johnson stepped in all perfume and confidence, chewing gum like she was keeping time. She was 27, Monique's cousin, and she had mastered the art of arriving when your guard is down. "Girl, you are really going to sit here until morning," Tasha said, dropping onto the vanity stool. "You are not going to do something special for Darius." Monique smiled, tired and polite. "What kind of special?" "Deliver the gift yourself," Tasha said. "You bought that gold watch, right? Do not hand it to a groomsman. Take an Uber to the Cole Heritage Hotel. He is there tonight. Slide him the watch with a note. Tell him you cannot wait for tomorrow." Monique rubbed her ankle sore from a day of standing. "You know my feet hurt. And showing up unannounced feels awkward." "It is your fiancé, Tasha pressed. "You are carrying his baby. Your wedding is tomorrow. If anyone gets to knock on his door tonight, it is you." Monique studied her cousin a beat too long. Tasha's smile was bright, but her eyes kept skipping away. Monique tucked that observation into the quiet part of her mind and stood. "All right," she said. 10 minutes there and back." "Good girl," Tasha said, already pulling the white gift bag from the closet shelf. She slipped a small card under the ribbon and held up the bag. Monique chose flats, not heels. She grabbed a shawl and her charger. In the hallway, her mother intercepted her with a kiss on the forehead. "Do you need anything for tonight, baby?" "I am fine, Mama. Just dropping something with Darius. Be back before your father notices you are gone." Outside, a rideshare pulled to the curb. The house slipped behind them, its windows warm squares in the dark. Monique glanced at her phone. Bridesmaids had messaged about hairpins and seats. She closed the screen and watched the hotel crest the avenue. The Cole Heritage was quiet and polished. A porter held the door. The lobby was still. Monique smoothed the front of her dress and walked to the desk. "Good evening," she said to the receptionist. "I am here to see Darius Cole. He checked in earlier." "Yes," the receptionist said, fingers moving over a keyboard. "Mr. Cole is on the 7th floor. He left a note for no interruptions." "No interruptions," Monique repeated. The receptionist added, "He arrived with a guest." For a heartbeat, Monique heard nothing. Her face did not change. The gift bag rustled in her hand. "Thank you," she said. "I will ride up." In the elevator mirror, she saw a composed woman. When the doors opened on 7, the hallway was quiet and chilled. She walked past 708 and 710. At 712, she stopped. Voices seeped through the door. A low laugh she knew. Another laugh she did not. Monique felt her heart knock once, then settle into a hard, steady rhythm. She took out her phone and opened the voice recorder. She pressed record. She did not bang or plead. She held the phone near the frame and listened. She heard the cadence of Darius, that polished charm wrapped around selfishness. She heard words about control and convenience. In the hush of the hallway, Monique gathered proof like a woman gathering her own spine. When the clip reached minutes that felt like miles, she tapped stop. She saved the file with a name she would find when she needed it. Then she backed away, the gift bag looped around her wrist, the card still blank. At the elevator, she touched her belly. "I hear you," she whispered. "I am listening now." Back on the ground floor, she walked into the night that no longer felt simple. The ride-share arrived. The driver looked at her in the rear view, as if to ask if she was okay. Monique answered with a nod that said not yet, but soon. She did not go straight home. At a drugstore, she bought tissues and a bottle of water and a spare memory card. In the parking lot, she made a backup and forwarded a copy to her email. Then she sat and let a single thought take root. Tomorrow I will not be anyone's fool. She tucked the gift bag behind the passenger seat and told the driver to take her home. The house was still bright. Somewhere an auntie laughed. Monique climbed the stairs without a sound, placed her phone on the nightstand, and allowed the room to be quiet enough for resolve to speak. The clock on Monique's nightstand read 2:14 a.m. She had not closed her eyes once. The house had grown quiet, the last cousin finally asleep, the last pan scrubbed in the kitchen. But in her chest, noise still echoed. She kept replaying the file she had saved. The words were sharp enough to cut air. She heard Darius laughing, the woman giggling, and then the sentence that sealed everything. I am only marrying her because of the baby. Monique pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the steady pulse of life. The child moved faintly, a reminder that she was not alone. No tears came. Shock had burned them away. Instead, a steady heat spread across her body, not rage but clarity. She turned the screen off, rolled to her side, and whispered to her baby, "You are safe. I promise no one will use you against me." At 5:12, she sat up, already dressed in a simple cotton dress. Sunlight edged through the curtains. Downstairs, voices began again. Women peeling fruit, men dragging chairs. Life moved as if nothing had changed. Monique tied her hair back and left the room. She slipped into the guest bedroom and locked the door. With her phone in hand, she called a number she knew by heart. A deep voice answered. Uncle Raymond. Monique, is everything all right? No, sir. I need you to listen. Do not ask for details yet. Please pull your investment from Darius Cole's business today. There was a pause. Raymond's voice dropped lower. Pull out. On the morning of your wedding. Yes. Before it is too late. Did he do something? Monique closed her eyes. Yes. But I cannot say over the phone. Please trust me. Silence stretched, then Raymond exhaled. I will take care of it. Are you safe? I am now. Thank you. I am proud of you, he said, and the line ended. She called the next number. Attorney Harris picked up cheerfully. Good morning, Monique. Ready for the big day? Monique's voice did not rise or fall. Harris, cancel the marriage license. Remove it from the registry. Do not let it be valid, not even for 1 second. There was a pause. Wait, what? I will cover any fees. Just cancel it. This is about Darius, is it not? Are you sure? I have never been more sure in my life. All right, Harris said. I will call the registrar's office before they open. I will also send a formal notice. Thank you, Monique whispered. She ended the call and felt her lungs finally fill with air. The license was gone. She had no ring on her finger, and she would keep it that way. By 8 o'clock, Tasha came into her room carrying 2 plates of grits and eggs. Morning, bride-to-be, she said in a tone too sweet. You did not eat dinner, so I brought you something small. Monique accepted the plate without touching it. Thank you. Tasha smiled too much. Her eyes darted everywhere but Monique's face. Nervous, she asked, You okay? You look tired. I could not sleep. Big day nerves, Tasha said quickly. Monique tilted her head. Yes, a very big day. Her cousin laughed lightly and sat on the edge of the bed. You will look like a queen in that dress. Darius is lucky. Loyal too, right? Monique said softly. Tasha froze, then forced a laugh. Of course. Loyal. Monique placed the plate on the dresser. Thanks for the food. I need to rest. Sure, call me if you need anything, Tasha said, slipping out of the room. Monique waited until the door shut before locking it again. She faced the mirror. The reflection showed a calm woman, not a broken one. She touched her hair, her belly, her jawline. Tomorrow, she whispered, I will show them who I am. That afternoon, Darius called. His voice was warm, practiced. Baby, how are you? I am fine. You did not pick my call earlier. I was with family. You know I cannot wait to see you walk down the aisle tomorrow. I could not even sleep last night. Monique pressed her lips together. You did not sleep. Not really. I just kept thinking about us and the baby. She let silence hang before saying, yes, we are really doing this. You sound serious, he chuckled. Are you okay? Just tired. Pregnancy and wedding do not mix. Once we are married, you will rest plenty. I will spoil you. I believe you, she said flatly. He talked about photographers and music, about the drone camera and the first dance. She answered with short nods he could not see. At the end, he asked, are we good? We are perfect. That was enough for him. He laughed, confident. That is my girl. When the call ended, Monique wrote a list of names, people she wanted to watch when the truth unfolded. She folded the paper neatly and placed it in her bag. That evening, her father entered holding a Bible. Daughter, let me pray with you. She stood and took his hands. His prayer was gentle, filled with wishes for peace and loyalty. Monique whispered, Amen, but in her heart another prayer formed. Let truth be louder than lies. That night, she did not sleep. She lay still, waiting for dawn. Her phone glowed beside her. The recording waited 6 minutes of truth that would change everything. By the time the sun rose fully over Atlanta, Monique had already mapped out every move in her mind. The air in the house was filled with chatter, pots clanging, relatives bustling, but inside her silence stretched like steel. She knew what she carried. Not just the child in her womb, but the proof that would shatter the illusion everyone admired. She spent the morning pacing her room, phone in hand, checking the file again. Every word of Darius's voice was burned into her memory. She did not need the recording to remember, but she needed it to show the world. At 9 o'clock, Keisha, her oldest friend, called. Girl, how are you feeling? Monique leaned against the dresser. Tired but steady. Keisha laughed lightly. That is normal before a wedding. Monique almost told her everything right then, but she held back. Not yet. Even friends could not be part of this plan until the moment was right. She said only, tomorrow will not be what people expect. Keisha paused. What do you mean? You will see, Monique replied, her voice calm. After hanging up, she went to the closet. She pulled out the bouquet she had chosen weeks ago, a delicate mix of cream roses and soft pink lilies. She held it in her hands and studied the hollow space near the base. It would fit perfectly. From the top drawer, she took the small Bluetooth transmitter she had ordered months earlier for rehearsal speeches. She slid it inside the bouquet and tested the button. A soft click, a faint blue light, and she knew the system was ready. Downstairs, the decorator arrived with ribbons and banners. Monique slipped through the hall like a shadow unnoticed. She stopped only to watch her mother arranging platters of food. The sight made her throat tighten, but she swallowed the emotion. She could not let love for family weaken her resolve. She returned to her room and pulled out a notebook. On the first page, she wrote 3 words in bold letters, do not break. Then beneath them, she listed her steps. Step 1, secure the recording. Step 2, hide the transmitter. Step 3, wait for vows. Step 4, play the truth. She read the list 3 times. Each line felt like a brick in a wall she was building around her heart. At noon, her father knocked softly. You ready for rehearsal? She opened the door, smiling faintly. I will be. He looked at her carefully, as if sensing the weight she carried. His hand rested briefly on her shoulder. My daughter tomorrow is the beginning of a new life. She nodded, saying nothing. Back inside, she sat on the bed and whispered to her baby, You and I will walk together not into a trap, but into freedom. The afternoon dragged. Darius sent a message full of emojis and hearts. She let it sit unanswered for an hour before replying with one word. Yes. He called and she answered with calm politeness, giving him nothing more than surface warmth. He had no idea she already held the knife of truth. By evening, the house was louder than ever. Cousins carried boxes, aunties argued over chairs, children ran through the yard. Monique moved quietly among them, her face serene. She carried her phone close to her chest like a hidden weapon. Later that night, when the noise had settled into murmurs and laughter, she sat with her grandmother on the porch. The old woman's eyes were wise, scanning Monique's face. Baby, you look too calm for tomorrow. Monique smiled softly. Calm is strength, Grandma. Her grandmother patted her hand. Then strength is what you will need. The crickets sang in the dark. Monique let the sound steady her. When she finally went upstairs, she set the bouquet carefully on the table and placed the notebook beside it. She lay down without undressing, phone in hand, eyes open. Sleep never came. Instead, she pictured the church, the guests, the moment the microphone would pass to her. She imagined the sound of his voice playing across the speakers, the gasp of the crowd, the silence that would follow. She whispered into the night, Tomorrow truth will speak louder than vows. And for the first time since the hotel hallway, she allowed herself a small smile. The morning sun crept through the blinds, painting golden stripes across Monique's bedroom floor. Outside her door, the house already buzzed with life. Pots clanged in the kitchen, gospel songs spilled from the speakers, and women argued joyfully over decorations. Everyone believed today would be perfect. Monique sat at her vanity while the makeup artist unpacked brushes and powders. You are so calm, the woman said. Most brides are trembling by now. I am ready, Monique replied softly. Her reflection looked steady, her eyes clear. She felt no panic, only a sharp awareness that each minute pulled her closer to the moment truth would unfold. On the bed lay her gown, a river of white silk flowing across the sheets. Her veil carefully pressed, hung by the door. Monique touched the bouquet resting on the dresser, its hidden device safely in place. She knew she had only one chance. Her phone buzzed with a message. Attorney Harris, license canceled, officially withdrawn. No valid marriage can take place today. Good luck. Monique let out a long breath. The weight in her chest lifted slightly. She was free before she even stepped into the church. Downstairs, guests began to arrive early. She could hear laughter, footsteps, and the opening and closing of doors. Darius was already outside, greeting people in a sharp, wine-colored suit, shoes, polished until they shone. He looked every bit the groom mothers dreamed of for their daughters. He smiled, shook hands, and spoke with confidence, unaware that his world was minutes from collapse. Beside him, Tasha stood in her gold bridesmaid gown, grinning too wide. She fussed with her phone, pretending to take photos of decorations, but her eyes flicked often toward Darius. Her hands trembled slightly when she adjusted the hem of her dress. Monique noticed from the upstairs window. Monique's mother entered carrying a tray of fruit. Darling, eat something. You need strength for the ceremony. Thank you, Mama. I will eat soon. Her mother kissed her cheek and left. Monique picked up a piece of melon, chewing slowly. The sweetness filled her mouth, but her mind was already in the church. She pictured the microphone, the hush, the moment when her bouquet would become more than flowers. A knock came at the door. Tasha slipped in, her perfume filling the room. She placed her hands on her hips. Look at you. You are glowing. Monique smiled faintly. That is what everyone keeps saying. Tasha sat on the bed, smoothing the sheets. Darius looks so handsome today. The crowd is already in love with him. Loyal too, right? Monique asked, her tone even. Tasha's face tightened before she laughed too quickly. Of course loyal. You two are perfect. Monique tilted her head. I hope so. Silence stretched between them. Tasha's eyes darted to the bouquet on the dresser, then back to Monique's face. She stood abruptly. Well, I will check on the ushers. See you downstairs. When the door closed, Monique locked it again. She returned to the mirror and let her fingers brush across her veil. Calm is power, she reminded herself. Minutes passed. Her father entered with quiet steps, holding a small Bible. My daughter, let me bless you before we leave. She rose and took his hands. His prayer was warm, full of love, asking for peace and faith. She whispered amen, though in her heart she prayed differently. Let the truth be louder than any lie. Soon the cars were ready. The convoy lined up in the driveway, engines humming. Guests gathered outside with phones raised, waiting for the bride. Children squealed, pointing toward the house. The air was thick with excitement. Monique picked up her bouquet, pressing the hidden button gently to be sure it responded. A small blue light blinked once, then faded. She smiled to herself. Everything was set. She slipped into her gown with the help of 2 bridesmaids, her movements graceful and unhurried. The dress floated around her, the veil draped softly across her shoulders. She looked into the mirror one last time and whispered, Today is not for vows. Today is for truth. Her father returned, eyes shining with pride. You look like a queen. Monique gave him a steady smile. Thank you, Daddy. Together they walked toward the waiting car. The crowd erupted into cheers as the door opened. Phones flashed, voices called her name. Children clapped their hands. To them, she was a radiant bride stepping into the happiest day of her life. To Monique, she was a soldier walking into battle. As the car pulled away, she kept her gaze forward, bouquet in her lap, fingers resting on the hidden device. The city streets rolled past, but she saw only the church ahead, tall and white against the morning sky. Her father glanced at her, nervous. No, she answered calmly. I am ready. The car turned the final corner. The church bells began to ring. Monique closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. This was the day everyone expected to celebrate love. Instead, it would become the day they witnessed betrayal exposed and dignity reclaimed. The church rose from the corner white against a clear Georgia sky. Guests flowed through the double doors, their voices low with excitement, dressed in their best. Ushers guided grandparents to the aisle seats and waved children toward the family rows. The choir warmed up with soft scales that drifted across the rafters. Monique's car rolled to a stop beside the steps. Cameras lifted. The door opened. She stepped out with her father's arm steady beneath her hand. She moved slowly and with intention, as if each step measured what her life would keep and leave behind. The bouquet rested against her hip, cool stems, and the hidden button beneath her fingers. Inside the sanctuary was fragrant with cream flowers and greenery. A banner hung above the altar with her name and Darius's name in gold script. The air held a pleasant chill, and the microphones hummed while the team made final checks. Near the front, Pastor Williams spoke with the best man and nodded toward the musicians. Darius stood at the right of the altar with his groomsmen in a clean line. His suit fit perfectly. His smile worked every camera. He straightened his cufflinks, then looked down the aisle as if he could will the moment forward. Confidence rolled off him. Tasha hovered 2 rows from the front in a gold dress. She lifted her phone for a slow pan of the decorations, then set it face down on the pew. Her hands kept finding one another, fingers rubbing fingers. When she glanced toward the side entrance and saw Monique and her father frame the doorway, her chest rose too fast. The organist pressed the first slow chords. Everyone rose. Heads turned like a single tide. Monique began the walk. She did not smile. Her chin was level and her eyes steady. She breathed through the stillness inside her, not through the noise. Her father whispered that she was beautiful. She answered with a small nod that said thank you, and also said, keep walking. As they reached the altar, her father squeezed her hand and placed it gently in the air between bride and groom. Pastor Williams guided the exchange with a quiet, practiced rhythm. The music faded. The congregation sat with a rustle that fell into silence. Monique and Darius turned to face the pastor. We welcome you, the pastor said, his voice steady and warm. Today we witness love made public. He spoke a few simple truths about kindness and patience. He asked the families to stand for a blessing. Hands lifted, then lowered. He opened his Bible. He looked to Darius. Son, it is time for your vows. Darius accepted the microphone with a steady nod. He turned to Monique and held her gaze. His face softened into an expression that read as devotion. He said that from the first day he met her, he felt peace in his mind. He said she steadied him and brightened the rooms he walked into. He said she carried their child, and each day carried more of his heart. He promised to protect. He promised to provide. He promised to be the partner she deserved and needed. He spoke about home and building a life their daughter would admire. He talked about mornings with pancakes and long nights of laughter. He said that where she felt fear, he would bring courage, and where she felt doubt, he would stay. The congregation breathed as if they had held air since the first sentence. An aunt dabbed her eyes. Someone whispered that it was the most beautiful vow they had ever heard. The photographer moved along the aisle, capturing the light on Monique's veil. The choir hummed a soft chord. Monique listened without interrupting. Each word fell like petals onto a lake that already held a stone. She stood with her shoulders open, her hands relaxed on the bouquet, the hidden device waiting. She did not look at the audience. She did not look at Tasha. She looked only at Darius and let a calm, unreadable smile rest at the corner of her mouth. Darius finished and handed the microphone back to the pastor. The room exhaled. The pastor thanked him and nodded to Monique to begin. Daughter, he said, your vows, please. Time slowed. Monique lifted the microphone. She felt its weight and the echo of every voice that had used it here. She bowed her head, then raised it again. She spoke first about truth. She said that love means clarity. She said that a promise without truth is a costume for fear. She said she would honor the people who raised her by speaking clearly. She thanked her father for steady hands. She thanked her mother for a backbone wrapped in gentleness. She said that she had learned that peace was not the same as silence. The congregation leaned forward. A murmur rippled and stilled. She breathed once more and let the moment stretch to carry what was coming. She said that vows mean nothing unless the life behind them agrees with them. She said that what she was about to share might hurt for a moment, but it would heal with time. Then she paused and glanced at her bouquet. The small blue light at the base of the stems sat ready. Pastor Williams waited, patient and trusting, unaware that the ceremony he guided was about to turn. Darius shifted his weight, smiling in encouragement, because he believed the script was still his to direct. In the pew, Tasha pressed her palms to her knees and held them still. Monique looked back at the pastor and said she was ready to continue with grace. Monique held the microphone, her fingers steady on the handle, though her heart thundered in her chest. The congregation leaned in, waiting for words of devotion. Instead, she lowered her gaze to the bouquet in her left hand. With a slow, deliberate motion, she pressed the hidden button. A soft click traveled through her body like a spark. The sound system crackled. For a second, people thought it was feedback. Then a voice familiar and smooth poured from the speakers. She is too emotional these days, always talking about our future. I am only marrying her because of the baby. Gasps ripped through the church. Some covered their mouths. Others turned to one another in shock. The recording continued. If she wasn't pregnant, I would be gone. Once the wedding is done, I will control everything." A woman's giggle followed, then another line dripping with mockery. "She thinks this is love, but she is nothing without that baby." The sound of kissing, then laughter, filled the sacred space. No, someone whispered. That cannot be his voice, but it was. Every person in the church recognized Darius's polished tone, now twisted with cruelty. Darius lunged forward, reaching for the microphone, panic written across his face. Pastor Williams held him back firmly. "Sit down," the pastor ordered. "Let her speak." Monique lifted her head. Her veil slipped back, revealing eyes sharp with resolve. She faced the crowd. "This," she said clearly, "is what happened last night while I was home praying for today. This is what my groom was doing." The recording ended, but silence remained heavy. Monique's words carried into every corner of the church. "That was room 712 of the Cole Heritage Hotel. That was my fiancé with another woman." All eyes turned to Darius. His skin had lost its color. His lips moved, but no sound came. From the front row, Tasha tried to slide out quietly, her gold dress catching on the pew. Monique's voice cut through. "And before anyone asks who the other woman is, look no further." She lifted her hand and pointed directly at her cousin. "Meet Tasha Johnson, my bridesmaid, my blood, and the woman my groom shared a bed with last night." The church erupted. Shouts, screams, the scrape of chairs. An older woman fainted. Guests pulled out phones, recording every second. Tasha froze in the aisle. Her face turned pale as she lifted her trembling hands to cover her eyes. Murmurs became waves of condemnation. Homewrecker. Disgrace. Betrayal. Darius stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Monique, it is not what you think. Please let me explain." She pulled her hand back before he could touch her. "Do not. You mocked me. You mocked this child. You mocked the love I carried while you were laughing in a hotel bed." Her words struck like stones. Darius dropped his hand. The room watched in stunned silence. Pastor Williams looked down, Bible still open, but no scripture could soften what had unfolded. Monique reached up, pulled the veil fully from her face, and slipped the engagement ring from her finger. The small gold band glinted under the lights for one last time before she let it fall to the floor with a sharp metallic tap. "I came here today to marry a man I thought loved me. Instead, I found the truth just in time. I will not cry here. I will not beg. I will walk out with my head high and raise my child in peace." She turned to the choir. Her voice softened but carried. "Sing not for a wedding, but for freedom." Then she stepped down from the altar, bouquet, still in hand gown, flowing behind her like a banner of defiance. At first, the guests sat frozen. Then one woman began to clap slowly. Another joined. The sound spread until the whole church thundered with applause. Some wiped tears. Others shouted her name. Phones filmed every angle. Darius stood rooted, staring at the space Monique had just left. His mouth opened, but no words followed. His mother pressed her hand against her chest, horror written across her face. She hissed at him under her breath. "You have disgraced this family." Tasha collapsed back into her pew shoulders, shaking, unable to face the crowd. Outside, sunlight hit Monique's face. She breathed in the fresh air as if it were the first breath she had taken in days. The baby kicked inside her belly, and for the first time she smiled. Strength glowed in her eyes. Reporters who had lingered near the entrance pushed forward, shouting questions. "Miss Johnson, is the wedding cancelled? What will you do now?" Monique paused only long enough to answer one. "I came here in a wedding dress, but I leave in my power." Then she stepped into the waiting car. Her father closed the door firmly. The vehicle pulled away, leaving behind a church full of flowers, decorations, and a groom whose lies had collapsed in front of everyone he hoped to impress. Inside, chaos reigned. Guests argued, families scolded, children whispered in confusion. Pastor Williams lowered his Bible and said quietly to the elders, "We pray." But no prayer could erase the sound of Darius's own voice echoing from those speakers. Monique's walk down the aisle would not be remembered as a bride moving toward her groom, but as a woman walking away from betrayal into freedom. The moment Monique's car pulled away from the church steps, the air inside the sanctuary thickened into a storm. No music played. No announcements came. The choir sat in frozen silence. What had begun as a celebration had turned into a public trial, and the verdict was already clear. Darius remained at the altar, hands trembling, eyes darting from face to face. His groomsmen backed away, ashamed to be standing near him. His best man muttered something under his breath and slipped quietly down the aisle, unwilling to share in the disgrace. His mother, Mrs. Cole, rushed forward. She grabbed his arm hard enough to make him flinch. "What have you done?" she hissed. "Do you understand the shame you've brought on this family? On this church?" "Mom, please," Darius whispered. His face was pale, his lips quivering. "Please, nothing," she snapped. "We all heard it. Your voice, your wicked laugh. You mocked the mother of your child. You mocked the very vow you were about to make." Her voice rose, carrying through the microphone still live on the stand. Guests gasped again. Darius reached out to lower the mic, but it was too late. His mother's words echoed through the speakers, sealing the truth. On the left side of the aisle, Tasha tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Two women from the congregation blocked her path. "You're going nowhere," one said firmly. "Not after what you've done." "I didn't mean," Tasha began, tears streaking her face. "You didn't mean to sleep with your cousin's fiancé the night before her wedding," the other woman snapped. "You think we're fools?" The crowd pressed in closer, some recording, some shouting. Phones lifted high, capturing every angle of her humiliation. Tasha collapsed back onto the pew, sobbing into her hands. Her gold dress, once meant to shine in celebration, now clung to her like a costume of shame. Pastor Williams closed his Bible slowly. In 20 years of leading weddings, he had never seen such devastation. He looked to the elders. "We will dismiss the congregation," he said softly. "This house is for truth, not for lies." But the people did not move. They wanted to see more. They wanted to watch Darius crumble. A man from the third row shouted, "You thought you were clever, Cole. You thought you could fool her and fool us. But you fooled yourself." Others murmured in agreement. Darius raised his hands helplessly. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said, voice cracking. I was stressed. I made a mistake." The crowd erupted with laughter, bitter and cruel. "A mistake," a woman yelled. "A mistake that lasted all night in room 712. He tried again. "I was drunk. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," another voice cut him off. "We all heard you plan to control her. We all heard you laugh about her child." The words pummeled him like stones. Darius sagged against the altar rail, his once perfect suit wrinkled and damp with sweat. Meanwhile, outside, Monique's car traveled slowly through the streets, followed by whispers and blessings. People who had witnessed her courage began to post videos online. Within minutes, her name started to trend on social media. #Monique the Brave. Room 712. The bride who walked. Comments flooded timelines. She is a hero. She saved herself and her child. She exposed the truth with grace. Back inside the church, Tasha's father and mother had arrived late, only to find their daughter sitting in disgrace. Her father's face turned dark with fury. He marched down the aisle, pulled her up by the arm, and hissed, "You have ruined our name. You will not show your face at family gatherings again." Tasha sobbed harder, pleading, but he dragged her toward the door, ignoring her cries. The congregation parted, some shaking their heads, others spitting harsh words. "Betrayer, snake, shame on you." Her mother trailed behind silently, her face blank with devastation. Darius watched helplessly as Tasha was dragged out. For the first time that day, he realized he had lost not only his bride, but also the accomplice who thought she would replace her. Reporters outside the church scrambled when the doors opened. They swarmed around Tasha and her father, cameras flashing. She covered her face, but the damage was already done. By evening, her image would appear on blogs and gossip shows labeled "the cousin who betrayed." Back in the sanctuary, Mrs. Cole collapsed into a pew, covering her face with both hands. She rocked back and forth, muttering prayers for strength. Beside her, an aunt leaned close. "We warned him. We told him Monique was too good for games. But he thought he was untouchable." Darius stumbled down the altar steps, pulling at his tie. He wanted to speak, but each word turned to dust on his tongue. He reached the front doors and pushed them open. Sunlight struck his face harshly, revealing the sweat, the fear, the fall from grace. Cameras swung to capture him. Questions flew Darius. "Is it true? Do you have anything to say? Were you unfaithful with the cousin?" He raised his hand to block the glare, but flashes kept coming. He muttered something about lies, about misunderstanding, but no one believed him. The recording was already online. The world had heard his voice. Meanwhile, Monique had reached home. Family gathered around her, their eyes wide with awe and pride. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "My daughter, you did what many would fear to do. You spoke the truth." Her mother, eyes glistening, whispered, "You have set yourself free." Monique smiled faintly, exhaustion pressing on her, but strength holding her upright. She sat in the living room chair, gown still flowing around her, and whispered to her unborn child, "We are safe now." By afternoon, the internet had exploded. News outlets replayed the 6-minute audio clip. Radio hosts debated the courage it took to play it in front of everyone. Churches discussed it in small groups. Women wrote posts saying Monique's choice gave them courage. One message stood out: "I stayed silent about my husband's cheating for years. Today I packed my things because Monique reminded me I deserve more." While Monique found unexpected allies, Darius faced immediate ruin. His phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from clients and investors. One message struck hardest: "Your accounts are frozen. Our deal is cancelled. Do not contact us again." His company, once his pride, began to crumble within hours. That night, alone in a hotel room stripped of celebration, Darius sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. The recording played again on television. His name flashed beneath the headline, "Groom exposed at the altar." He groaned, wishing he could silence the world. But the world was louder than his excuses. Tasha fared no better. In her parents' home, she wept into her pillow phone, buzzing with insults from strangers. Former friends blocked her. Her workplace suspended her. She had thought she was clever, but she was now infamous. As the day closed, Monique lay in her own bed, finally free of the weight that had pressed on her for months. She whispered again to her child, "We walked out together." And that was our first victory. The night was quiet, but beyond her walls the city still echoed with her name. Morning light spilled across Monique's living room. She sat curled on the couch, barefoot, still wrapped in the robe her mother had given her years ago. The television played softly in the corner, though she hardly needed it. Every channel carried her story. Anchors repeated the same lines. Pregnant bride walks out of wedding after exposing groom. Room 712, the altar bombshell. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in: friends, strangers, even women she had never met. Some called her a hero. Others begged for advice. One message read, "You reminded me I am not weak." Another said, "I walked away today because of you." At first, the attention unsettled her. She had not done any of it for fame. She had done it to save herself and her child. Yet the words from strangers brought a strange kind of healing. She realized her pain was no longer just hers. It had become a lantern others could follow. Keisha arrived mid-morning carrying bags of food and 2 cups of coffee. She set them down and shook her head in amazement. "Girl, you are everywhere." Do you understand what you've started? Monique smiled faintly. I didn't start anything. I just refused to stay silent. That's exactly what makes it powerful, Keisha replied. You gave people courage. Later that day, Monique sat at her desk with her laptop open. For years, she had journaled privately, recording thoughts she never shared. Now she felt an urge to put them into the world. She created a simple blog and called it The Bride Who Walked. Her first post began with one line, I wore a white gown, but I refused to marry shame. She wrote for hours. She wrote about trust broken, about finding strength when silence seemed easier, about walking away with dignity instead of staying for appearances. When she published the post, she did not expect much. By evening, thousands had read it. Dozens commented with their own stories of betrayal and survival. Every new story reminded her she was not alone. Women from across the country wrote about husbands who lied, partners who cheated, and years of silence they finally broke. Monique replied to as many as she could, her words steady and kind. Each message felt like a thread weaving a new fabric of solidarity. Meanwhile, Darius faced the opposite tide. His office, once full of staff and buzzing with phones, grew silent. Clients canceled contracts. His assistant resigned. Investors pulled out. He called Uncle Raymond desperate, but the older man's voice was firm. My trust is gone. You used my niece and tried to control her. I want no part of you. Darius slammed the phone onto his desk. His empire built on charm and calculated deals collapsed in days. He moved from the hotel to a rented apartment far from downtown. The curtains stayed drawn. His phone lit with reporters' questions he refused to answer. Every time he checked the internet, his name sat beneath headlines, drenched in shame. Tasha endured her own downfall. Her parents refused to let her join family dinners. Friends ignored her calls. At work, she faced whispers and cold stares until her supervisor quietly suggested she take leave. She scrolled through endless comments calling her a traitor, a snake, a disgrace. Each word cut deeper. Nights became long hours of sobbing into her pillow, wondering how one choice had destroyed so much. While they sank, Monique continued to rise. A week after the wedding, she received a call from a women's group in Atlanta. They asked her to speak at a gathering. At first, she hesitated. She had never spoken publicly before, but something inside urged her to accept. On the day of the event, she wore a simple blue dress. The hall filled with women of every age, some holding babies, some sitting with folded arms, eyes wary but hopeful. When Monique stepped to the microphone, the room fell silent. I am not here because I am perfect, she began. I am here because I broke and stood again. She spoke slowly, sharing her story, without dramatics, letting truth carry the weight. She told them how she walked into her wedding with love, but walked out with freedom. She told them that leaving did not make her weak, it made her strong. By the time she finished, the women stood and clapped. Some cried openly. Others rushed forward to hug her. One whispered, I wish I had your courage 10 years ago. Another said, you gave me hope to leave today. Monique returned home shaken but proud. She had not only freed herself, she was helping free others. That night she sat with her father on the porch. He watched her quietly before saying, You turned your pain into strength, daughter. That is rare. She leaned against his shoulder. I didn't plan it. It just happened. Maybe God planned it, he replied. In the weeks that followed, her blog grew into a movement. The Bride Who Walked became more than a title. It became a safe place for women to share stories and encourage each other. Volunteers reached out offering to help manage messages. Monique realized this was bigger than her alone. She set up a small office space downtown with donations from supporters. A simple banner hung on the wall, You are not weak. You are walking away from what was never yours. Each day, women visited, some in tears, some in silence. Monique listened, comforted, and reminded them of their worth. Her pregnancy progressed, and she carried her child proudly. At every gathering, people noticed her glow. They said she looked more alive than she had in years. She answered with a smile. It was not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace. Darius watched from afar, bitter and restless. He once believed his name carried power. Now it carried only disgrace. He tried to reach out with calls and messages, but Monique never answered. She had given him all the words she would ever give when she walked out of the church. Late one evening, as Monique closed her laptop after another long day of writing, Keisha looked at her and said, "Do you see what you've become? You're more than the bride who walked. You're a leader." Monique touched her belly gently and whispered, "I'm just a woman who chose herself." And that choice had begun to change everything. The rain came late that evening, heavy against the windows of the Johnson home. Monique had been folding small towels in her bedroom when a sharp pain spread across her lower back. She gripped the dresser, her breath catching. Another wave followed, stronger than the first. Her mother rushed in, eyes wide with urgency. "It's time," she whispered. Within minutes, the family moved quickly, almost like soldiers who had prepared for this moment. Her father called the driver. Keisha packed the hospital bag that had been ready for weeks. Monique clutched her belly and whispered to her child, "We made it, you and me." The car ride through the storm felt endless. Thunder rolled overhead while her father held her hand. "Breathe," he reminded her. "You are strong." She nodded, sweat already on her forehead. With each contraction, she closed her eyes and pictured the church, the aisle she had walked, and how she had turned betrayal into freedom. That memory steadied her more than any painkiller could. At the hospital, the nurses rushed her into the delivery room. The lights were bright, the bed cold, the air filled with clipped voices giving instructions. A young nurse named Bianca smiled warmly. "You're doing great, ma'am. Just a little longer." Hours blurred into one another. Monique gritted her teeth, gripping the rails of the bed, pushing through waves of pain. Her mother stood by her side, whispering prayers. Her father paced in the hallway, waiting for news, his heart pounding with every muffled sound. Then at dawn, a piercing cry filled the room. "It's a girl," the nurse announced, holding up the tiny wrinkled miracle. Tears flooded Monique's eyes as the baby was placed in her arms. She stared down at her daughter, skin soft and fragile eyes blinking open for the first time. She named her Amara, which meant grace. The child squirmed gently against her chest, a small fist curling into Monique's robe. For the first time in months, Monique felt whole. The wedding that never happened no longer mattered. What mattered was this life, this future, this new beginning. News traveled quickly. "Monique Johnson has given birth," headlines read. Supporters online flooded her pages with congratulations. Women who had followed her story wrote messages like, "Welcome, baby Amara." She was born from strength. Pastor Williams himself sent a handwritten note. "You may not have stood at the altar, but you have walked into something greater. May God bless you and your daughter." At home, the Johnson household filled with joy. Relatives visited, bringing food, flowers, and gifts. Her father, usually stoic, learned how to fold diapers and even attempted to cook soup, laughing when he spilled half the spices. Her mother rocked Amara gently in the evenings, humming lullabies. Keisha decorated the nursery with bright murals declaring it a kingdom for the little queen. Monique spent hours holding her daughter, whispering promises into her tiny ears. "You were never a mistake. You are the best thing that came from the worst moment. I will protect you. I will show you what it means to be strong." Meanwhile, Darius sat in a one-room apartment with peeling paint. He had watched the news of Amara's birth from a cheap television propped on a crate. His eyes stung with sleepless nights. Once he would have been the man standing proudly beside Monique. Now he was nothing more than a cautionary headline. His company had closed, investors gone, his reputation burned. He reached for his phone, but every call to Monique went unanswered. Even his own sister had stopped returning his messages. Across town, Tasha scrolled through pictures of Amara online. She wept bitterly, knowing she would never be allowed near her cousin's child. Her parents still refused to speak to her. Friends had vanished. She typed out a long apology message but deleted it before sending. She knew it would not matter. Some betrayals left scars too deep. Monique, however, did not think of them. She focused on healing, on nursing her child, on sleeping when she could. Each day she grew stronger. Each day she felt her spirit rise. 1 week later, a women's group invited her to speak again, this time at a university conference. She hesitated. Amara was still small, but her mother promised to sit in the front row with the baby, so Monique agreed. The auditorium filled with students, mothers, and even a few fathers curious to hear her story. Monique stepped onto the stage in a flowing dress, Amara wrapped in a sling across her chest. She looked out over the crowd and smiled. "My name is Monique Johnson," she began. "I was supposed to be a wife, but I chose to be something better myself." The room erupted in applause. She continued telling the story, not as tragedy, but as transformation. She spoke of betrayal, of courage, and of choosing dignity over shame. She reminded them that walking away does not mean weakness. It means knowing your worth. The crowd stood and clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Monique left the stage with her daughter sleeping peacefully against her chest, a living symbol of rebirth. At home that night, she sat quietly watching Amara dream. The moonlight touched their faces softly. She whispered, "You saved me, my child, and now I will spend my life saving others." Beyond the walls of her home, the city buzzed with her story. Women wrote letters. Churches invited her to testify. Organizations reached out for partnerships. Monique smiled but remained humble. She knew her journey was not about fame. It was about survival, healing, and creating a safer path for the women who would come after her. And so with every dawn, Monique found herself reborn alongside her daughter. What had begun as heartbreak had become hope. What had begun as betrayal had become legacy. Weeks turned into months, and the world that once gossiped about Monique's ruined wedding now spoke of her resilience. Her blog, The Bride Who Walked, grew beyond anything she imagined. With donations from supporters and guidance from Uncle Raymond, she opened a small office downtown. The walls were painted white, and a simple banner hung over the entrance. "You are not weak. You are walking away from what was never yours." Each week, women arrived quietly, some with babies on their hips, some with bruises hidden under sleeves, some with hearts shattered by betrayal. Monique welcomed each one. She listened. She held their hands. Sometimes she cried with them. Other times she gave them silence, letting them know they were not alone. Her own story had become a bridge, and she walked across it with others. Amara grew quickly, her laugh filling every corner of the office. Monique often brought her along, cradled in a carrier, while she typed responses to letters or led small group sessions. Visitors loved to see the baby, often remarking that she was living proof that beauty could rise from brokenness. Monique never disagreed. She simply smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. Meanwhile, Darius lived in obscurity. His company had dissolved completely. Creditors claimed his assets. He rented a one-room apartment on the edge of the city, his once polished suits now wrinkled and unused. He spent long nights staring at the ceiling, haunted by the memory of Monique's calm voice in the church and the applause that followed her departure. He tried once more to call her, but the line was blocked. He sent flowers to her office, but they were returned unopened. In time, even the reporters lost interest. He became a man no one trusted, a name whispered only as a warning. Tasha remained isolated as well. Her parents kept their distance. Old friends cut her off. She scrolled endlessly through social media, watching Monique's rise. Each post pierced her deeper. She typed out apologies late at night, but never sent them. She understood that forgiveness might come someday, but reconciliation would never arrive. She carried her shame quietly, a shadow she could not shake. Monique did not waste energy thinking of either of them. Her days were full. She was invited to conferences, to churches, to community centers. She stood before crowds of women and men, telling her story not as a scandal, but as a testimony of courage. She said again and again that walking away was not failure, it was freedom. One afternoon, she stood at a university auditorium, holding Amara in her arms as hundreds of students listened. She spoke of dignity, of love that uplifts instead of controls, of the right to leave when trust is broken. The crowd rose to their feet, clapping until the hall thundered. After the event, a young woman approached, her eyes wet with tears. "I was going to stay with someone who hurts me," she whispered. "But after hearing you, I know I can leave." Monique embraced her gently. "You are stronger than you think." At home that night, she sat on the porch while Amara slept inside. The air was cool, the stars bright. Her father joined her, placing 2 mugs of tea on the table. He looked at her for a long moment before saying, "I am proud of you, daughter. You ended pain before it grew roots. You chose life." Monique smiled softly. "Sometimes I still feel like crying." "Then cry," her father said, "but cry because you are free, not because you lost something. You did not lose a man. He lost you." The words settled into her heart like truth etched in stone. In the months that followed, Monique began writing a book. She titled it, "The Vows I Kept for Myself." In it, she told her story with honesty, weaving lessons of courage and self-respect. When it was published online, it became a small bestseller. Letters poured in from women across the country, thanking her for giving them language for their own pain. By Amara's first birthday, Monique had become more than the bride who walked. She was a leader, an advocate, and a mother whose strength inspired thousands. She stood on stages with Amara often at her side, declaring that no woman should ever feel trapped by lies or bound by shame. Her journey was not perfect. There were still nights when she remembered the sting of betrayal, the laughter from room 712, the gasps in the church. But those memories no longer defined her. They were simply shadows behind the light she now carried. On a quiet evening, she sat by Amara's crib, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. She whispered, "You were my beginning again. You are why I will never be silent." The baby stirred, sighed, and settled back into dreams. Monique leaned back in her chair, peace washing over her. She had walked away not just from a wedding, but from a future that would have stolen her dignity. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she had chosen her daughter. Her story had begun with heartbreak, but it ended with hope. True love never destroys dignity. When betrayal appears, leaving is not weakness, but wisdom. Every woman has the right to protect her peace, and every child deserves a home built on honesty. Monique's journey proves that walking away can be the first step toward true freedom.